So it's the beginning of week, I think it's week 3, whatever week it is. I wasn't able to get the bodice finished over the weekend. I wasn't very well. So what my goals are today are to get the collar, not sewn on, but at least sewn together. And then I can cut out the skirt panels while I have the table space and get them overlocked because I don't have an overlocker at home. So far this morning I've managed to draft out the collar piece. I basically just drafted it with a piece of paper. I cut out a rough neck, a rough curve of the neck, and then just held it up against the bodice, which I pinned to a male mannequin. I've also roughly tacked the back into the kind of overlap the back opening anyway. So I looked at the ballet bodice because I can never remember which side goes over which, and because I marked the centre back and then where I want the placket to be quite like a wide overlap. So what I've done is on the true right side I folded it back as intended, and on the true left side I've just folded over the edge to hold the lining in place. So there's quite a large what's what I'm looking for, modesty panel, I guess. There's a lot of area that can have hooks and bars sewn to, so adjusting will be easy, but it still overlaps, and the centre front is still the centre front. It's just the overlap is a little bit offset, as it would be on doll clothes. So it looks pretty good. I'm quite pleased with it, but I just kind of held it there. With the collar, I've drafted it so that it's going to be like a Peter Pan style collar with 2 halves to it. The centre front will meet in the centre front, obviously. The centre back will stop just where the placket begins. So that's about 2 inches in from the edge, about 1 inch away from the centre front. So in theory, there'll be a 2-inch gap between the pieces at the back, which again is quite common with doll clothes. And it also means that for adjusting, it's going to be easier to adapt because there's always going to be a gap at the back between the 2 pieces, and it won't look so strange if it needs to be taken out or taken in. It also means that the collar itself shouldn't need to be touched unless the shoulder seams are altered, but I think it's more likely that the side seams will be altered, if any. So that should be fine. I've cut it out of the white cotton again. I did consider cutting it out in satin, but if I am maybe going to be using satin for a bow, I don't want too much of that satin, and I don't have much of it anyway, so I want to just make sure that I'm conserving that fabric as much as I can because it's quite an unusual one. I've cut out the collar pieces. I've doubled the cotton to give them a bit of extra stiffness and a bit more structure, and I've only wheeled through one. I've basically got 4 pieces, and I've only wheeled through one of them, so I have like 2 pieces that have the markings on that I can then use to sew the lace onto them together. I don't think I need to do both. It's just going to waste time. What I am going to do is I'm going to do the sort of tailor tacks to, not tailor tacks, I don't know what's called, the big, not stay stitching, the sort of zigzag like giant herringbone, just to hold the 2 layers together, so that they effectively work as one piece of fabric, just to make it a little bit easier on me when I'm sewing and to try and avoid the fabric sort of ruckling up and doing odd things as it moves. I want this to be quite a nice clean collar. I don't want it to be like weird little bubbles in the fabric and stuff, so the more I can reduce that, the better. I'm going to go for lunch now, so after lunch I'm going to continue with those tailor tacks. I'm going to also run home and get some of the lace that I've got, because I realised that I probably should have organised which lace I want to use and ordered something, and I have the lace from Fabricland, the lace samples I've ordered, but I've only got a metre of each of those, which is really frustrating. So I need to have a look at the lace that I've got and decide which one I want to use, if any. I did briefly consider also sort of like scalloping the edge of the collar so that it doesn't necessarily need the lace, it's just like a nice edge finish in itself. But thinking back to my dolls at home and the sort of research I've done, doing that kind of collar on a doll at doll scale would be quite difficult to do, just because of how tiny and fiddly it is. So most of the samples I've seen just sort of like slap some lace around the collar and I'm done with it. Obviously I won't just be doing that, but I'm also trying to keep in mind the sort of scaling element. I still have yet to send back that lace I got off eBay, which I think the more I look at it, the more I want to use for the bow in the front if I don't use the satin. I think it just looks a lot nicer, but I just need to get it in white. But to do that, I contacted the seller and I need to send the black lace back and they can exchange it for white, which is great. It also means I'm not going to spend loads of time doing crochet because I just couldn't get it right and it was taking too long, it was taking too much time. So yeah, so I'll probably do that. I might try and get that done over lunch. And yeah, so bag up the lace to be returned, have a look through my lace stash to see what would be suitable for the collar, eat lunch, and then try and get the collar finished. And if not, then at least cut out the panels for the skirt this afternoon.